what is something that we can offer to a female listener who maybe wants to take care of this, but doesn't want to do it in a way that she has in the past? Maybe she's shamed in the past. Maybe she's gotten angrier than she should have been in the past. What is something constructive that she can say to her partner when he is perhaps looking a little too long?
Honestly, you're good by bringing us back to that, because I really appreciate that, because we're sitting here trying to normalize it for, in this scenario, it's the betrayer or the turning to unhealthy coping mechanism person. But yeah, to the betray. First of all, if you are that guy and this has been a problem in your relationship, then please have your spouse listen to this episode. And thankfully, Josh just brought it back to the betrayed, which I'm grateful for, because we've been hitting the betrayer. But this is where this is where it just gets so, and I don't want to say tricky or difficult, because I want the wife to be able to say it in a way that is, like, I appreciate, and this is hard because I feel like the betrayed, it's so hard even in I don't know if it is for you in the coaching world, but as the therapist, it's almost like they've found out there's been some D-Day, there's been some disclosure, they haven't done that very well. There's probably been a staggered disclosure. So the more questions she asks, then he finally, okay, fine, you're right. So we've trained already the brain to then hammer, then he gives me more information. So that needs to be undone, and that takes some time. And so this is where I always say I hate even asking the betrayed to do anything at first, because they're still trying to make sense of this thing that they can't make sense of. But that's where I would say, with all that said, when you can get to a place where you can say, because if you are just suffering in silence and saying, this is a me issue and I just need to get over it, your brain again is going to go, I won't. I mean, I'm going to fight for this. I'm going to, have this reactance, psychological reactance. So I feel like at some point, with the help of a coach or a therapist, that you need to have the opportunity, the ability to say, hey, let me bring something up. This is really difficult for me. I see you, I see the work that you're doing, but I'm still triggered, because I often say in my work, I tell the betrayed, I want them to eventually become a trigger response valve. I mean, I want them to be able to feel safe to express their triggers, and objectification is going to be a trigger, but only if their spouse is doing the work. And then they are, and this is how long I've been saying this, when everything was a ninja, I want them to be it's called an attachment injury apology ninja, where that's like, man, thank you for bringing up that trigger. And I'm sorry I put you in a spot where now, whenever we're out in public, that you worry that I'm wanting to have sex with somebody because I'm looking at them. But I'm here and I'm working on it, and that's where I would rather have that happen, and then if she says, well, how are you working on it? If his answer is like, look, I said I am, well, then that's a surface level thing. And then that's like more of that gaslighty vibe. But if it's, I'm talking with a therapist or a coach, and so I appreciate you bringing that up. But at this point, I'm grateful that we're in the place that we're at. Like, that's going to assure her that, she's not crazy. He understands. And then over time, the more that she recognizes those triggers and knows if she brings up a trigger, that he's going to say, thank you so much. And I'm sorry I put you in a spot where, and I'm not even being funny about this one, but where, we go to a Mexican restaurant and then we have a Hispanic waitress and you're triggered because maybe he had an affair with a Hispanic woman. I want that to not just all of a sudden the elephant comes into the room. I want them to have a solid tool that she can express, and then not in a way of like, do you ever think about Hispanic girls now? I'm going to hammer you with questions until you finally tell me something, versus man, when I see this, it triggers me, and have him be able to say, thank you so much for sharing. That would be hard. And I'm sorry I put you in that spot. So anyway, that's a mouthful.
Do you feel like for her sanity, for her clarity, for her ability to move on, she should always mention when she thinks that objectification is happening?
It's a great question, Josh, because it's one of those funny things where this is where I want to be a coach and say, hey, no, when you can sit with that discomfort and know that, all right, this isn't always about me, or maybe it isn't about me at all. And I know he is going to counseling, or he's working with the coach, or he's doing his step work, or he's, I know he's working on this. So if I can sit with this discomfort and stay present, hold his hand, or stay at the movie, or stay at dinner, then I'm doing something powerful for me. Like, that's pretty powerful. But if she can't, that's where I say the coach part of me wants to say, here's my 4-step, acronym for how to stay present when you're triggered. But then the therapist wants to come in and say, and if that doesn't work, then here's the tool to be able to be a human being, and then say, man, this is a hard one for me to let go, because this is like because I had a couple recently go down. I live in California, and they went down to the Bay Area, and the husband had an affair with an Asian American woman. So then in the Bay Area, there are a lot of couples where there's a Caucasian and an Asian American. And so this woman was like saying, she just said, I didn't realize all the triggers, that I would have there. Because she's like, we're in a pretty good spot. And then she sat on him for a full day, and they're there to have an amazing vacation. And then by the time that she finally expressed it, she said she had already let herself just get so far down the rabbit hole that she couldn't pull herself out of it. And the vacation ended up being a little bit of a dud. So that's where I was saying, I would have loved if you could have right out of the gate been able to address that. Just said, okay, we're an hour in, and I am noticing this. And because I would have loved for him to then had the opportunity to say, hey, I hear you. And you know what, if we need to go, let's go. And because I feel like that would have been just enough for her to go, no, I'm okay. Like, I appreciate that. So your question is such a good one.
I think that's good advice for
if she needs to,
sides of things, then, is that the longer you ignore the elephant in the room, the worse it's going to be.
Right? It's going to keep moving closer in front of you. Okay, and I know we're going long on this one, Josh, but I really love this. I've never talked about this like this because I had my men's group last night, and we were talking about triggers and dates, things like that. And so the big question was, and let me ask you your opinion on this, and I'll give you my take too. But so the thought was that a guy had talked about it had been a year since his D-Day, his disclosure. He actually got caught. And then they're in a really good spot now a year later, really good spot. But he was going out on a trip where the year earlier, it was that same trip where his wife found all the stuff, and then had to confront him. And what was interesting, and the reality is I've been working with this couple. They're in a really good spot. Like, they've done an amazing job. They've got the right tools. They've been coming weekly, this sort of thing. And she's actually saying, I feel pretty good. And he was the one saying, I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling, so he was the one that was more triggered. But I only give that scenario because it brought up a discussion in the group of guys saying things like, okay, well, if I'm aware of the trigger, and there's one that the guy laid out a thing about a restaurant that he used to go to with his affair partner, then his wife's aware. So whenever they drive by it, it's just silence, but he says, I don't want to bring it up just in case she's not thinking about it. He's like, but I'm thinking about it. And so I was mentioning that, well, first of all, what's your thoughts on that? What would you ask or want the guy to do in that scenario if he's aware, but he doesn't know if she's aware?
He doesn't know if she's aware that's the restaurant he went to with the affair partner?
No, they know it's the restaurant, but he's not aware if she's just like vibing to some music and the windows are down and, or if she's like sitting there thinking, I can't believe we're driving by the restaurant, and he doesn't even care. He doesn't know which one's happening.
That's a tough one. I would probably, and this is where I'd say, if as the guy, I could tell you that I probably would say nothing.
Yeah.
I would address it if she brought it up first.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pull the pin out of a grenade that may go off. That doesn't make any sense. If we can get by this restaurant, I will probably forget about this restaurant in 5 seconds. Maybe she will too.
Yeah. And so I feel like that's the, not that there's a right and a wrong answer. I feel like that's the more common answer. And that's my go-to answer. But then when this comes up in sessions, and I was telling my men's group last night that I think and I'm not a big all or nothing guy, but I think pretty much every time, if it gets to the point where it's brought up in a session, that the wife's saying, okay, even if I wasn't aware, I would rather him bring it up and it be uncomfortable just so that I know that he sees me. And then this is that part where I feel like I don't know if it's just my guy brain, but in my mind, I'm thinking, really?
Yeah, I mean,
or is it pretty cool that you get to go a day where you're not thinking about it,
But my guy brain, which, let's be honest, I was once the betrayer. You and I wrote a book, and I was the former addict in this. I've got to say, my guy brain has not evolved to the level of enlightenment that I would be driving by and say, honey, there's the restaurant where I constantly met my affair partner. How are you feeling about that as we drive by? What kind of a
But that's where I feel like, and I hear you,
that?
and it's funny because, okay, well, and it's because this is what's so funny about it is because if one framed it that way, then I would say, oh, that is a dumbass move, right? But then the way that I've like worked it through in a therapeutic way would be, hey, I just want you to know, I'm here for you. I care about you. I don't know if driving by that restaurant, if that brings anything up for you, but I just want you to know that I'm here. I'm aware. Like, it's a tender touching moment versus the, hey, honey, we used to meet actually over on the side of that parking lot. So see that red Buick? Like that used to be exactly where I parked. And if I would have pulled up there now, I would have said, well, how dare you be in that spot? Because that's the one the tree blocks from the main road. Like that's, I wouldn't do that.
No, you should not.
No, but that's the one where I feel like, so right now, the data I have, which is pretty much anecdotal, and I hear it, is that when that makes its way into a session, that the wife says, even if I wasn't thinking about it, it would mean a lot to me that you care enough to be aware. But, and this was a session literally like last week, but then I felt like the couple did a nice job where she said, now I will have a reaction, but we're, as a couple in therapy, we're learning that, again, tension isn't a bad thing when you have the right tools. And that even if it brings up emotion in that moment, if you have the right tools to process what is happening, then when the amygdala finally does a little bit of a reset or calms down, then it's a little bit easier to then have some appreciation that your spouse had the courage or, that sort of thing to then let you know, hey, I am thinking about you and I am aware of what happened. And so, I'm willing to be uncomfortable, because I think what it also subconsciously tells the spouse, the betrayed, is that I'm willing to have some discomfort, because, when you're talking about somebody that was turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms, a lot of times at the root of that is them feeling uncomfortable. So in one sense, they're saying, hey, I can sit with discomfort and I know what I did and I'm here for you. So I get that part. It's just, it can be a bit bumpy.
Realistically, and I think this may be the difference between the coach and the therapist, I appreciate everything that you're saying. I think it's absolutely theoretically correct. However, as a coach, I tend to often tell my clients we live in the real world. And I'm not going to set off my partner, who's already mad at me about this stuff, whenever I can, because I see something. And if she's not, I appreciate the fact that in this scenario, you have a betrayed partner who is enlightened enough to say, well, I appreciate you bringing this up as we pass the restaurant. And even though I was not thinking of that, I appreciate that we're going to those feelings. I coach from a place of realism, which is...
Oh, you coach from a place of avoidance. I felt like that would be a very powerful moment for me, Josh. No, you're right. I hear you.
But I think avoidance is what's going to happen 97% of the time.
Well, and that's where, and you're right. And it's easy to validate you on that, because I dig this so much, because this is even where I was on a podcast interview a few weeks ago, and I talked about how, I think I really have worked with 1,400 couples now, which is an insane amount of couples. And I realized as a therapist that it was, 600, 700, 800 couples in, where I realized I was still not wanting to sit with my own discomfort. I wanted that couple to then have an aha moment in every session and them to be really happy, and it wrapped up with a bow. And then that made me a good therapist and they were happy. But then it wasn't, I didn't know what I didn't know about what real commitment to actual evidence-based therapeutic tools, what it can look like. And this is, in this podcast, I was saying, I can promise this version of two differentiated, interdependent people with their own experiences that are going to then deal with a lot of discomfort, because they're going to have different opinions when they go through these areas of life that they've never been through before. And then with the right tools over time, then they learn that discomfort really is where that they're going to learn more about their partner. And then they're going to have this opportunity to self-confront. And that's the part I realize it sounds probably to most people right this second that I am just spewing out cliches. But as somebody that's been going to weekly couples therapy for a year and a half, which might sound like, bamboo shoots in between fingernails, but I get the benefit of seeing a couple. I mean, I see 20, 25 couples a week. And when they're committed to this process, it is 100%. They had no idea the level of connection that they could have around things that they never would talk about before, because, why would I bring that up? That might break into a fight. She might find out something about me that I'm embarrassed about. So that's the part where I feel like when you say you live in the world of the real world, you do. Because I thought when I became a marriage therapist that, everybody is going to eventually want to get to this version of a marriage where they can open up about anything, but they don't even have a clue of what that looks like, because they didn't see it modeled growing up. They have to go through crap to even go find the tools. Then most therapists are the therapist I was for 700 couples in a decade, which I really thought I was a good therapist, but I was just wanting everybody to feel good, and they would, but they weren't dealing with stuff. And so then you have to find the right therapist. Then you have to find the therapist has the right tools. Then you have to both be committed, because a lot of times somebody will make it into my office and it's pretty evident that one of them is just doing a checkbox, you know, but they're on the road to divorce. So I get the fact that it's like, you know, it's almost like only the few are able to then get to that place. And so when you say 97% of people or whatever, I'm like, yeah, I kind of think, unfortunately, you're right. I mean, I used to think I could get 70% of the couples I'm going to work with to this nirvana. And now I'm like, I would be lucky to get 10 or 15% there. But the ones that get there, I know this sounds cliched, it is so incredibly worth it, because it's just, it's crazy.
Well, hopefully we answered this question for people. Hopefully
This was fun. I've never talked about all this stuff like this before. So I appreciate you. You asked really good questions. And I think that we, maybe as we go on, this is bonus episode 4. I really like Josh. I really like the coach therapist vibe. I know we've maybe alluded a little bit to that, but I really like it because I used to not be so, I used to think coaches are just setting people up for failure, in a sense, if I'm being honest, because then I would get the people in that had already gone to 3 different life coaches, paid thousands of dollars for courses and programs, bought the self-help books. And then they're like, what's wrong with me?
Screwing them up so you can get more clients?
Well, now I do. That's the thing I've realized. No, but now I realize it, because as a therapist, it can feel like people will say, I don't feel like I'm making progress. And I get to be the one saying, I mean, it is technically, but I didn't have the coaching tools to then do a little bit more of I really think this would be helpful to do this, because in our world, we're supposed to, well, it's not about me, you know? And the coach is like, hey, I've got tools. So I really like the combo. I feel like this is one where we should have had something planned where it's like, and so now if you've made it all 45 minutes into this bonus episode, Josh and I will offer you the world's greatest combo pack of therapist and coach. And, you know, which we should talk about that because I know, because I know, and this is so joking, I would say even me, after this many couples, like I still know that I don't know the coaching tools for porn as well as you do. And I'm grateful for your knowledge there. And that's where I realize sometimes when I'm talking to a coach, and this is why I so appreciate our level of back and forth and comfortableness, is that I know the things I know. And when I'm talking sometimes to a coach, they're butting me like crazy. Yeah, but they just need to learn that, and they just need to, and every time I hear that, they just need to, I'm like, okay, I've worked with now, 1,000 people that then are like, and I know I just need to, but then I don't. So that makes me even feel worse, which finds me turning to things even more that are unhealthy. And, and so it's like, I think it's that perfect combo of you just need to, and you kind of really do. But then when you don't, let's talk about it. And that's where I feel like the coach therapy thing happens. Right. Yeah. What a joy. I feel like this one should almost go out as a bonus episode to show people what the bonus episodes are going to be like. I might have to put this one out on my virtual couch.
If that's what's going to make you happy, as we drive by this restaurant where I saw other therapists.
Oh, yeah. How dare you?
That's cool.
Where did they park?
That's cool.
What were they driving?
I like that.
Okay.
As always, thank you everybody for listening. We appreciate it. Hopefully we delivered exactly what you needed.
That's right. Okay.